My name is Jace, and welcome to Cosmic Origins and the second episode of my new series, Cosmic Talks. I'm super excited to bring you this interview with my good friend Nikolai, who is an expert and inventor in the field of plasma and Gans technology. In this interview, we talk about a whole number of different things relating to Gans technology and plasma technology, including inventions that Nikolai is making himself, the Kesh Foundation, and how plasma technology can be used for free energy, for healing, and also for actual physical teleportation and space travel. So that's one of the more exciting things you'll have to stick around to the end to hear about, which is how Nikolai is going to be a part of one of the first human trials and experiments in using plasma technology for both astral and physical space travel. So go ahead, stick around to the end to catch that. And I want to say that this program is brought to you by my coaching program, Conscious Crypto. That is what makes doing these videos possible and what keeps me going and what puts dinner on the table. So Conscious Crypto is going to teach you all about how to get started in the crypto space with digital assets and generating passive income. It's a high support coaching program with weekly calls and a great student community that you can interact and network with. And right now I have a limited time free training available on my website, which you can check out. It's a free class that's going to go over XRP and its new role in this quantum financial system. We're also going to talk about private wallets and how you need to have your funds somewhere where you actually have control over them. So many people are getting their bank accounts shut down, getting their PayPals, their Patreon shut down, because these are all centralized institutions with an agenda to prevent truth from being spread. And so you want to have your money somewhere that no one can touch it and you actually own it and are sovereign over it. And that's what private wallets do for you. And then finally, we're going to talk about how you can generate 4 different kinds of passive income in the digital asset space using your investments, which is way better than the negative 1% on average that you're getting in the banks, right? So go ahead, click the link in the bio to check that out, and let's get started in the interview. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Cosmic Origins. We are here in Sedona. I'm here with my friend Nikolai today, the return of Tesla, to talk about plasma, GANs, Tesla technology, plasma technology, astral travel, and a bunch of other really cool stuff. So Nikolai and we met back in, was it 2019
Yeah.
at the
Cosmic Awakening.
Cosmic Awakening event here in Sedona. So we met there and hit it off, and then we saw each other again the next year.
Yeah, 3 years later, this time around.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Nikolai is by far the most educated and wise person that I've met when it comes to plasma and GANs technology, and he's like my go-to person for talking about this stuff. So I'm super excited to do this interview with him and share his wisdom and his knowledge with you because he knows so much. He's really a wealth of information, and he's going to be going through some really cool experiments regarding plasma and with a group called the Kesh Foundation. So we're going to talk about all that. But let's start off with you and your background story, your origin story, and like kind of how you woke up and got to where you are now. And then we'll go into the Kesh Foundation, and then we'll go into some of the cool experiments with astral and plasma travel. So go ahead.
Yeah,
talk
man.
about what your background is.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be with you guys today. Thank you very much for checking it out and tuning in. Man, I don't even know where to start. It's been a wild road. So I guess my true awakening happened through failure of the medical system. So we all have different versions of how we wake up. My first wake up was 9/11 when I went, that doesn't make any sense. I think I was in grade 8 in high school, which then ostracized me from that whole world and was like, oh, you're one of those conspiracy folk. Yeah, go hang out and whatever. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm not going to hang out with any of the cool kids now. Great. Sweet. And then back asleep, as we do, in different cycles and times and back into the matrix. But yeah, the second awakening was the medical one. And that's, I went to India and Nepal for 3 months on a trip with my roommate at the time. And he'd been like 8 or 9 times. He was like, dude, you have to come. It's like you don't even know what's out there in the world until you see something different.
Yeah.
And I got really sick. So within like a few days of being there, everyone's like, oh, you got Delhi belly. It'll be fine. That's just normal. 2 weeks go by. You'll be back to your old self. And that didn't happen. So months go by, I'm still sick and all the rest, and then I come back to Canada after my trip, and like 5 or 6 concurrent parasites and meningitis. So like days after being off the plane, I'm in the hospital, can't move my neck,
Oh,
spinal tap. They find
spinal tap.
Oh yeah, they have to do a spinal tap to find out whether or not you have a bacterial or viral version of the bug.
Yeah.
The viral one they don't do anything for, and you're fine. And the bacterial one will kill you faster than they can test for which one it is. So essentially, the medical system is we have to give you IV antibiotics,
Oh my gosh.
and we then find out
And
whether
we
or
hope
not.
it's not bacterial.
Well, if it's IV antibiotics and it's bacterial, well then they've killed it, and so then you're fine. But if it's viral, then they basically just nuked your gut flora, which happened to me. So then 30 days go by, they're like, oh yeah, you're good, you can go home. And then I lost about 30 pounds from about a 150-pound frame in a month. So I was like super skin and bone, like couldn't eat anything, still like this big gut, and the rest of the body was withering away.
Yeah.
And it took me 5 years to get back to health.
Dang.
And then I had 2 shoulder surgeries. So I was on the couch for about 7 years. And YouTube is a wonderful resource. And one day I found someone making a Keshe Foundation technology thing. It was like, I think I found it from like free energy searches on YouTube. And this guy was making these copper coils, and I looked at that, I'm like, there's no way. I mean, I can make that today. Like, that's real? What? And so I made one of these and played with that. Didn't get the results I was expecting, but probably had no idea what I was doing. And then I found out that they had essentially got a university. So it's like an online university that you can apply for, super cheap, $100 a year. So basically anyone on the planet can have access to this.
Yeah.
And so I started studying that while looking at conspiracies at the same time. And we don't need to mention which ones. We all know which ones. So I had these 2 divergent paths. One which was like researching the new technology around the planet, the things that felt like super awesome, while also looking at the dark side of everything that's been going on this planet for probably thousands of years, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And coming to terms with these 2 completely divergent worldviews, and how could they ever possibly line up? And kind of at a certain point, I just decided to drop the look into the dark side at whatever time I was ready. And I just said, you know what, I don't need to do this anymore. This is a waste of my energy. And I learned a lot. I found out about all the crap that we're doing to this planet, all the people doing the weird shit, and then went, okay, I don't need to do that anymore, and moved fully into this other realm.
So did you feel like you went, you observed the darkness, you saw it existed, and then you're like, okay, I don't need to focus on this as much anymore because I'm aware of it, but you didn't want to feed it your constant attention, basically, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We all get to a certain point, and one of my friends, actually, the one that the girlfriend of the friend that I went to India with a long time ago, said, you don't need to look at any of this stuff. You can just go live your life and be happy.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe you can. I'm a guy. I need to know what the weird shit is and then look at it and address it in my own life. So I did that. A lot of soul searching, a lot of the horrible shit that we kind of wish we hadn't seen, but it was part of the process. And then really diving into the Keshe Foundation teachings after that. So I've been studying with them for like 5 years, basically, at this point. And it's always an elevation. There's always like you're learning this and you think it's the best thing ever, and it's helped a lot of people, and then there's another step, and then another step, and then another step. And in the last 6 months, Keshe Foundation has absolutely blown the roof off what they were doing before. And that's where, we'll get into that maybe in a little bit, but that's where it's getting really fascinating. And yeah, so I mean, when we had the whole situation happen 2 years ago with Corona going around the world, Mr. Keshe gifted us knowledge seekers tools to deal with that. And so there were these plasma waters and things that you could make at home with very, very simple tools, essentially copper, zinc, and salt water. And as long as you followed the recipe, more or less, and knew how to apply it, you could process viruses out of the body. Wow. Not just Corona, but all viruses. So this is something that already, by that definition, doesn't exist in the medical system. Like I just explained the version of the viral meningitis. They're going to nuke the body with antibiotics for a virus that doesn't kill the virus.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ridiculous.
good job. Like,
Good
well
job,
done.
science.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you. So, you know, that all world kind of collided for me, and I went, holy crap. And for me, one of the easiest tests was I have the herpes simplex virus that was passed on from my mom on the lip. And anytime I get like a little pinprick, if anyone knows, the shit sucks. You get these like blisters for 2-3 weeks, looks awful, feels shitty, and your whole immune system kind of drops when that happens. And so what I would do, the minute I began to feel like a little pin prick on the lip, would be go into the bath, and I would add equal parts of these 2 Gans waters into the bath, and sit in there for about 45 minutes, and then do the same thing the next day. And the cold sore never showed up.
Wow.
So for me, that was real world proof, non-invasive, not going into my body, literally just sitting in a bathtub of water.
Yeah.
And the energy pack, which is what our teacher calls viruses, he calls them energy packs.
Yeah.
Is essentially processed by the elevated souls of the body doing the work. So we essentially bring the energy up in the body, it can process what it needs to, and the thing doesn't show up because the immune system knows what to do.
So it's the body doing the healing.
Yeah.
The Gans is just providing the right environment, would you say, for
exactly.
it to do the healing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Adding the energy that's required. And so plasma, the Gans material, we may as well explain what that is.
Yeah,
Gans is an acronym for gas, GA for gas in the nano state. So these are gases like CO2, for instance, which we normally understand to be a gaseous material that leaves the tailpipes of the cars supposedly and is causing global warming.
Right.
Maybe.
The trees love it though.
The trees love it, and that's exactly the point. So how come trees can use this and we think it's harmful to the planet? There's some kind of missing link there.
Yeah.
But we can create a CO2 Gans material, so it's essentially like a little gel-like material. And when you add it to, let's say, a gallon of water, you might add a very little bit about this material. The gallon of water will be informed with the magnetic and plasmatic fields of that element, of that material, and then you can feed that water to the plants or spray your house with it, and they love it. You have huge accelerated growth cycles in these plants. The cucumbers and tomatoes are bigger, they're brighter, they need less sunlight to grow. So they're getting energy from a different field, from a different state. So that's where I was at for a number of years. I was just using plasma water. I thought it was cool enough that we could help the garden grow. And that was, my introduction to it. But later in the game, as Kesh always does, it's like a stepping stone to the next. They moved into the virus depletion process and elevating the souls and the beings who are using these materials. And then it moved into something which on June 6th of this year, they had the first person put through this soul travel experience, which they're calling the Universal Body Enhancement Spaceship Unit. That's a mouthful, I know. And this is an egg-shaped craft. It's a big white-looking ship, and they look cool. You might have seen them in Dreamtime someplace, somewhere. And they're putting people into these systems and essentially keeping their physical body here on the Earth, but allowing the magnetic field of the blood to drop to a certain position to almost be like in a dream state. So we can understand this like at death, at the point of death. Well, what happens? The heart stops beating, and the iron field in our blood drops. And so the soul that we came here on, the one that's up here, that soul travel can go. And it goes on to the next realm or wherever it wants to be, or back to Creator. And so that field dropping in the blood allows that soul, kind of like in sleep state, to have a more expanded experience. So instead of fight or flight running from the bear, where the blood's pumping as hard as it can to keep you in the body, because you need to deal with a real problem, when you're sleeping, when you're meditating, your heart rate drops. And so that allows that soul field to expand a little bit further. And that's where we have more interesting astral travel or dream.
Right. Okay, that's awesome. I want to get into that deep, but let's cover a little more about Gans and Kesh, and then go into that.
Sure.
So, what would you describe as like the main practices or functions that the Kesh Foundation is using this technology for? Like, if you were to split it up into categories, you already said antiviral, right?
Yeah.
And then this kind of dream state, astral travel, potentially even like physical spaceship type travel, right? Like, and then
absolutely.
Energy, that's a big part of it as well.
Yep. So there's, you can look at essentially any aspect of our lives, be it from relationships, be it to agriculture, education, space technology, energy systems. It's essentially a broad spectrum. So Kesh has understood the universe on a very different way than we have till now. This is universal knowledge. He's not from this planet. He's told us this many, many, many times. He's not from here. I mean, you can listen to him for 10 minutes and go, oh, right.
Yeah. I think most of the people who bring amazing technologies here fall in that category of
Yeah.
their visitors here.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah. They've
bringing
got a
this.
very specific mission, and they're carrying it out. But yeah, so the energy systems are actually really interesting. So, um, along with putting somebody through that system and having them do a soul travel experience in June, I think it was also in June that they released at least the first tests of these energy systems. There was one video where they had two parallel systems running on a car battery, so whatever those 12-volt car batteries are.
Yeah.
They had a fridge, 3 lights, and a fan, I think, or something to that effect. So, whatever, not a huge amount of power, but
Household
consistent.
appliance
Yeah,
type things.
exactly. And then they had the same system on one side, regular system hooked up to the battery, and then another one on the other side with a plasma power unit in between. So the battery is still charging the system, but it has now got this added field effect. And it lasted, I think it was 55 minutes on the conventional side before the battery was depleted, and it was almost 2.5 hours on the other side.
Wow.
So it's about 2.5 times longer that the same battery lasted running the exact same fridge, running everything else. So that's like
Wow.
a 3x almost multiplier, which if you understand that correctly, you could probably have been charging the battery that you're running the system on in the same amount of time, and you would have had a perpetual system.
So how would that work? You're charging it with its own energy field, or you're charging it with a separate energy field?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, you could probably have two systems running parallel. So you might have like one car battery being charged from the system while another one is being used to power the system.
Right.
But if it's a 3-hour window, how long does it take to charge a car battery? I don't know. But it's definitely possible to have had those linked up. But it also applies to the idea that, well, what if you replace the car battery, which is a 12-volt car battery, with something much bigger? You still get a 3-factor multiplication of that field. So now you could look at something like a conventional power plant that's running on coal or diesel or whatever it's using and get 3 times more power out of it.
So basically you can take a system and optimize the efficiency of the energy moving through it.
Yeah.
Regardless of what type of energy the system's even using.
Yeah.
Because I noticed you were doing it with cars, in car engines.
Yeah. So that idea was basically just car batteries because it's a conventional block. Everyone knows what it looks like.
Okay,
you're not putting a gas generator inside a running building or whatever. So that was probably a good reason to use that.
Yeah.
But he also mentioned, well, what's Tesla doing with their cars? He said essentially they have an entire battery bank as the base of the vehicle. Well, if one half of that battery bank was charging the car to drive while the other half was recharging from the system, you'd never need to plug the car in ever again.
Wow.
So that's the idea that's happening here. You buy a car and you never plug it in again.
And then eventually, I'm assuming we'll be able to remove the battery from the equation and kind of take that out of it,
likely.
have it be more pure or whatnot.
Yeah. So essentially, I mean, the way the Keshe Foundation has always worked is always stair-step. Because if we start introducing something that's like way up here, all of society is going to think this is magic.
Yeah.
And we're not going to learn. And how many times have Star Family from other races come here, given technology to the planet, and then it ended up being this huge big karma problem and this wheel of misfortune because someone helped someone that wasn't ready? That Star Trek first principle. Like, we need to be able to be ready to make contact before they can show up.
Right.
Because otherwise we're going to bow down to our masters and go, oh my God, thank you. And it's like, no, we're all the same.
Yeah.
All consciousness everywhere is the same. There's no hierarchy. So there's always an evolution that's been happening. So that was one system that they brought out. Shortly thereafter, I think even in like the next week, they brought another system out, which was, I think, a 300-watt self-contained power supply system. So the first one was released in Iran. The second one was released in Austria. Totally different systems, totally different people building it, same technology.
Wow.
So then he said, well, what if we take this 300-watt supply, which is not a lot of, 300 watts is barely going to run a fridge.
Right.
Or 400 watts. But if you add the 3x multiplier to that, now you have 1.2 kilowatts.
That's crazy.
That's getting close to being enough to power a house.
Wow.
You might need 2. So that was a week later. In 2 different places, they had these technologies released. The following week, they brought out the hydrogen generators.
Right.
So they're creating hydrogen from the fields of the universe and then burning it.
And they're not explaining yet the mechanism behind that, right? That's still kind of
That's still closed. The
secret.
box is essentially a shut box, so
Right.
we can't look inside the box to see how it's happened. I think there's probably very specific reasons for that. But the energy crisis in Europe was actually the reason why he brought this out.
Especially now, that's really relevant. Did you hear about the gas leak? That
Yeah, absolutely. Whether that's a leak or sabotage,
right. Well,
I mean,
yeah.
it's really good timing if it's a leak.
I think they even said, like the European whoever said that it was intentional. Like they're admitting that.
It's got to be. I
Yeah.
mean, the timing of it in the world stage doesn't make any sense for that to be an accident.
The other synchronistic thing is everything going on with Iran right now. Have you heard about that with the kind of uprising and everything there?
Yeah.
And with Kesh being from Iran, I could see that working hand in hand with maybe these technologies end up being adopted by whoever ends up running the country. Maybe there's a revolution or something, and now they're actually able to get these technologies in.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, why, if these technologies have existed at the Kesh Foundation at the very least for years, like some of them for decades, right? Like
This
the
technology
Gans.
was given away to all of the world leaders on USB drives 10, 15 years ago.
So why haven't we seen it publicly? It's probably a question people would have. Where is it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, the world's not ready.
right.
And this is something that we've probably, and your viewers will know, only at the precipice
Hmm.
will humanity decide to change.
Right.
Because we're ready, but look around. Is mom and dad ready? Is Uncle Charlie ready?
Yeah. How would they react?
How would they, and is it again then magic?
Hmm.
Is it, well, how does this happen? So I think there's a kind of a crushing point that has to happen.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, when the energy crisis began, that's when the solutions show up. Whether or not they're adopted by those governments that are falling and are essentially corrupt and holding on to power, probably not. But there might be one or two nations that decide, hey, screw this, we're going to go and do this anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, well, all of a sudden, one or two nations, the Keshe Foundation, you got to realize, is a worldwide organization run by volunteers.
Yeah, here in Arizona, there's a whole center for it down in, which is one of the things that's baffled me that they, this technology has been presented to the world governments, like you said. It's the world governments who are clearly the ones stifling it and not distributing it, right? Like if it were up to Kesh, people would probably have access to it.
Yeah, there would be one of these units on every street corner.
Right. But somehow they're still allowed by the powers that be or were, to open up these centers and operate. So there is an interesting amount of like room that's being given to operate this stuff. It's not like they're totally shutting it down, because otherwise I would imagine they wouldn't even be able to build these centers, especially in the United States,
Right.
if they were like truly opposed to it. Like there's no way this tech will ever reach the public. So it does seem like it's slow
shifting.
acclimation.
It is shifting, yeah. And I mean, it's interesting, the spot you're mentioning in Arizona is in Tempe, I think. And I went and visited the brother who's running that shop. But he's bought this building, and it's been sitting basically empty, renovated, ready for, I think, a year and a half or 2 years.
Wow.
And originally, all these systems were supposed to be released, I think, at the beginning of 2020. Interestingly enough, the location where they were building these spaceship units was in Wuhan. And
Wow.
90% of his workforce didn't show up after the 2 weeks lockdown. Read into that whatever you want.
That's something probably no one has thought about besides people in this loop about
Yep.
why that could have all gone
Why
down.
there?
That's crazy.
It's a big province. I'm sure there's lots of things that could have happened.
And they were
there's-
developing the energy or the astral pods there?
They were building the universal body enhancement spaceship units there.
Okay.
And that's
Wow.
where so China was going to be the place where all these were going to come from.
Yeah.
And they had to entirely rebuild and move everything into Austria. So it took 2 years to reset everything. They added and Kesh has often talked about how it's actually a blessing, because he said the units that we were going to release then to the ones that we're releasing now are literally 1,000 times more developed. So we went, it's always a blessing.
Yeah,
You guys nothing can stop what is coming in this regard. It's going to happen. And the more they push, the more it seems like there's always just another evolution that happens. And it's like, haha,
Yeah.
ha 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 ha. But back to the Tempe spot, the systems that are in Austria right now were actually meant for the United States. They were supposed to be in Tempe.
Wow.
And Homeland Security is what's blocked them from coming here.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. And did they has Kesh said specific reasons that they gave or anything?
I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
National
essentially,
security or
yeah,
something.
yeah, national security is a very blanket term that's been used for all kinds of reasons to stop things from happening.
They're like, hey guys, we don't need this narrative out there right now. We're trying to get everyone to look at these UFO videos that the Navy's taken.
Right.
Pay attention to that. Don't pay attention to this stuff.
Yeah, let's look at some 1930s footage of something that might have been filmed on a computer. But anyway, it's a fascinating time to be part of this, and it's exciting as all heck. But
so these I forget what words you described it as again, but these pods, is it kind of like a medbed technology as well?
Kesh will never use that language.
Right.
Because of health reasons, we can't say these do anything. There's been actually, I think just now in the last few weeks, there was a 5-year ban put on Kesh Foundation for health conversations by the corrupt Belgian pedophile networks, and somehow connected to the King of Belgium, very corrupt nation.
Yeah, Belgium is super.
Yeah, in the middle of all of Europe with all their hands and all the dirty things. So that 5-year whatever, I don't even know how that was implemented, just ended. So Kesh Foundation was literally not allowed to talk about health applications for 5 years. So anything that was health related was elsewhere on another YouTube channel, not related to them, couldn't be released publicly. Might have been just in the private teachings as well. So that's just ended. But the medbed language is actually really, I have a big problem with it. Essentially, anything new coming out today that has anything to do with health is called medbed, and people are running around with this language and have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And there's no difference. So is it a frequency-based technology? Is it a sunlight-based technology? Is it a Gans-based technology? Is it a plasma field-based technology? Is it radionics?
It's all getting called medbeds.
And it's all being wrapped up into this ugly kind of mesh of words, which the collective seems to have a resonance with, and we want this, but there's no definitions.
I think it's because everyone's seen it in science fiction. They've seen like the, whether it's
a healing chamber or an armband that you put on, and then So I mean, there is something to say about that for sure. But Kesh will never call it medbed technology. No one in the Kesh Foundation will ever call this medbed technology.
That's good. I'm glad they don't, because that would be, it would be kind of a strange association. It would probably not do best for the situation of everyone learning and really understanding what it is.
Yeah.
But they do have, I mean,
there are health benefits.
Say this, but there are health benefits.
There are, and again, there are videos on YouTube, I think even from the end of 2019, with the same system that they are now showing for the universal body enhancement units, where they had I think it was a Alzheimer's and Parkinson's patient in China who was going through the system 15 minutes twice a day, and then had physiotherapists helping him, like substantially helping him to do this retraining. But in 30 days or 40 days, he was running on an Olympic track faster than his physiotherapists.
Oh my gosh.
And this was a man who was in a wheelchair and couldn't move for 2-3 years.
Wow.
So that's out there.
Was that using a Gans technology or a different kind of plasma?
Using the universal body enhancement systems.
Okay. Which, is that Gans based or?
Yeah. So yes and no. The Gans material. So if we were to look at the kind of stair step of how we got here.
Yeah.
We talk about the matter state, which is touchy-feely metals and things, to be the least energetic. So if you can imagine atoms in a wire being like this together, that's the copper wire. When we move into the nano state, it's essentially separating the atoms a little bit, and this field container starts to be the most important thing. So the elements are a little bit more spread out. When we move into the Gans condition, that gap becomes wider still, and so it's more of an envelope for fields. After the Gans state, you walk into the field state, which is, again, every one of these jumps is an order of magnitude more energetic than the one before. So going from the nano state, or from the copper wire, let's say, to the nano-coated copper wire is a huge energy difference.
Okay.
And then again to the Gans is another energy difference. So in these systems, I think they're using something like 400 different Ganses.
Wow.
In dynamic ways.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that looks like exactly.
That's a lot. I didn't even know there was that many.
Yeah.
That could be made.
Yeah.
Is that all? That's got to be using different metals than the standard, like.
Definitely.
Okay.
So yeah, we've essentially been exposed to 4.
Okay.
As the basic Gans materials, and then there's been a few added on in different systems in different ways. I have no idea, to be perfectly honest, how these are operating. But I think the idea is you need to support every element in the body that exists in every different condition, all the salts of the body. And so I know the guys that are running the systems in Austria. Klaus is a doctor who then learned the Kesh Foundation knowledge and essentially figured out the rest of the knowledge that he had been missing. So that's where it really is. This is not like, hey, we know best. This is, no, we're adding to the knowledge.
Yeah.
And if people are receptive to it and they have a background in science or they've got a background in medicine, they're going to do really well if they've got an open mind. And in the resistance where it's like, hey, I know best, that's when people falter and it kind of all falls down.
Right, because you can't take the standard scientific models of physics and of biology and chemistry and apply them
No.
perfectly, right? Because it's like a different model of science almost that is more in resonance with the truth than the models of science than we've been taught, right?
Yeah, it's essentially the substructure. So the plasma sciences go across all of these different levels, and it's if you can learn that, then you can go and apply it to biology or wherever else you want to go. You're going to get far better results because it's actually in resonance with the universal way of being. So the entire universe is plasma based.
Yeah.
It's all plasmatic fields, and how the sun and the earth interact to create all the materials on this planet.
Right.
So it's like the sun is radiating its energy out in all directions all the time, irrespective of where it goes. But it's the Earth's request for certain fields based on its magnetic field that creates different elements here and creates our bodies how we are. So one of the big cosmic jokes is we've been looking elsewhere with all these telescopes for water on different planets because then we can confirm life. Well, one of the things Kesh has talked about, which made me laugh, was water is H2O only on Earth.
Interesting.
So if we're looking for water, H2O elsewhere, why would it be hydrogen and oxygen?
Right.
It's a totally different planet.
It's just water in the sense that that would be the main liquid, if it even is a liquid, that makes up the organisms that live in those places, but maybe it's not H2O, maybe it's silicon.
Titanium and silicon.
Yeah.
That just happen to have that right balance on that planet that makes a liquid condition where life can be.
So what's the underlying definition of water in that case? A life-providing liquid, kind of?
I mean, here it is. Water is fascinating.
Yeah.
Water is very fascinating. I don't think we have a clue what water really is, but we do live in a hydrogen-based universe, and so it does make some sense that hydrogen would link itself into life on an energetic level, because it is essentially the life, so the energy source for so many things. So it could be that it just matches with, instead of oxygen, it matches with nitrogen somewhere else, and that becomes water on that planet because it's got a different field. And so this is one of these moments where I went, oh my God, we've been looking for the wrong thing. Maybe life exists right next door, and we've been going, well, there isn't anything there because it doesn't match our version on Earth. Well, yeah, you look one planet closer to the sun or one planet further from the sun, why would those elements be the same?
Yeah.
If it's all based on a magnetic resonance or magnetic field of where these places are, it would be very different.
It would, definitely. Yeah, that's a great point.
But that dovetails actually into kind of what the next phase of what the Kesh Foundation is doing, which is moving people through these systems in what they've called a jump room. So
let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's get into that. I mean, it's fascinating already. They had these egg-shaped crafts, these pods that they were putting people in.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, they said, we don't even need to put them through the pods anymore. We can put 2 of these on either side of a room and make the room the pod.
Okay, so let's talk about the pods again. What exactly do the pods do for people that don't really get
so
it?
they're creating magnetic or plasmatic fields.
Okay.
And so depending on how they've set these systems up, again, I have no real understanding of what's inside them.
Yeah.
We've only seen people's experiences and their testimonials coming out of them. They haven't necessarily opened them up to public to see. Maybe by going there in Austria in 2 weeks, I guess I'll be there. I may have a different version.
So you're going to be going and basically test piloting one of these, right?
Yeah, so that's going to be really interesting.
That's super exciting.
Yeah,
one of the first humans ever to test one of these for literal astral travel, right, or physical even.
Well, yeah, that's the interesting thing is since June 6th, so auspicious day of 666, very funny. I think that's a nice little jab at the powers that were.
Yeah.
Kesh Foundation said they're going to go to the moon, and so they put.
So that's 2024. That's the third 6.
No, 2022.
Oh, 2022.
222.
Oh, I see.
So a few months ago.
Right.
They put a young gentleman and his friends. I'm not sure who it was exactly, but they put him through the system, and he was instructed by Kesh, hey, it's a reminder you came here to travel, because essentially they're putting the people through these different chairs, they're calling them. So the one chair balances the body with a certain energy field, I don't want to say frequency because it's not frequency based, but a certain resonance happens. Then they moved into the second chair, and that's when the soul field begins to expand. And people say they feel it in their head, this like magnetic pressure happening. And then they moved into the third chair, at which point, after that experience happens, they're moved into the pod or into the jump room.
So the pod is a separate thing from the chairs.
Yeah, the chairs are like like you can call it like a compression or decompression chamber, perhaps. Like you're getting up to speed, and then you're going
in a closed environment.
No, I think these were like headgear almost. They kind of looked like a hairdryer from the 60s.
Okay.
It would be like sitting on their head.
Yeah.
And had this kind of interesting looking device.
Yeah.
And
very like 80s sci-fi.
Totally.
Like Total Recall.
Yeah, I mean, like to be honest, this technology does seem to look like what we've all got in the consciousness for what these sci-fi movies have brought to us. So.
And we were talking about privately outside of this how it is kind of like the concept of the chair that was a tech seeded here by ETs. That people, like whistleblowers who have worked on reverse engineered UFOs and stuff, they talk about these chairs, which I imagine is a kind of probably a common technology among different worlds that humans are coming into in this way with what you're talking about. But basically like a system, a chair that you sit down in, and it like reads your energetic field and interacts with your consciousness and your plasma field.
Right.
So
yeah, it's fascinating how similar in a way it is. It's not doesn't quite look as Hollywood like as they want it to, but I mean they're advanced looking things. There's no moving parts in them. They're not plugged in. You know, there's interesting things happening when you look at the thing and go, wait, how is this working?
Yeah.
I mean, so there's anyway. So they had these 3 chair systems. I think at some point they've combined that all into one now.
Okay.
But at the beginning, when they were still running these experiences, they had the first chair balanced the body, the second chair balanced the soul of physicality, which is what Kesh refers to as the energy center within the heart space.
Okay.
And then the third one was the soul of the man, which is the energy center in the brain. If you look at an MRI, there's a tiny little black dot on everyone's MRI right in the middle.
What?
That's the seat of the
that.
soul.
Is that at all related to the pineal or pituitary, or totally
I think it's
separate?
different. I think it's different.
Wow.
But yeah, apparently that's the thing. And I went, oh, that's hilarious. Because people also talk about the small point in the heart. That's like the still point where the magnetic fields of the blood coming in and the blood coming out kind of meet. And there's a still point in the heart. I think Greg Braden at HeartMath talks about this.
Okay.
It's like not moving.
Wow.
So it's a still point there and a still point here.
By still, you mean no blood, no muscle movement, like...
It's just like I have to look at this again, but there was a moment, I think, where they talk about this neutral point.
Right.
And that would be like a black hole.
Right.
Which again, if you look at the Kesh Foundation teachings, he calls black holes primary stars. So it's like an energy giver, not an energy sucker into nothing.
Right.
Which, again, everything upside down in this world.
Wow.
But so he talks about these 2 energy centers getting balanced as you go through the 3 chair experience. And what's interesting is when they get moved from the 3rd chair into the system, they don't hear anything anymore. They hear people's voices as noise. So they're literally not in the physical body as they were before, but they still carry out the actions that have been asked of them. So the people are describing hearing noise as like,
just unintelligible noise, like...
I don't know, maybe white noise, maybe unintelligible. It could be like it's a different language even or something. But they still carry out the tasks. Wow. So they're being asked at some point, they're in the system, in the room, or wherever they end up, and they're asked or reminded, hey, you came here for a reason. Would you like to fly? Would you like to go somewhere? And instantly they're there. No time getting there. Kesh calls it a go-to room, not a flight room. Not a jump room, but a go-to. And so these people were, this one gentleman was on the moon. And he looked at his body, and he had lots of hair on his body, and it was cold, and his body looked different. And you could see the dust and play with the dust on the moon. And they had confirmations of other people that were going through the system together, so they could see whether or not they were there or not. And so I think they always sent them in pairs or in quads to be able to refer back to, that was you, or that I felt your presence if it wasn't your physical body, but I recognized that it was you.
So do you mean that there are like multiple pods that people are using at the same time, and then they are able to account for seeing each other in that space, like on the moon?
Yeah, I don't recall if they actually have 4 people. I think there was systems that had 4 chairs in the pods.
Okay.
So they might have put all 4 people at once, or 2.
Okay.
Or there might have been one where they didn't even use the pod itself, but had a room that they called the jump room, which was just a place where the fields would gather between these two units.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the next phase. They removed the pod from the experience, put one on either side of a room. I haven't seen the inside of the room yet, but
Yeah.
maybe I will. And then at one point they had a whole group of Italians come, like a whole, I think 5 or 6 people, and they had a party. They wanted to have a party on the moon. And one of the funniest things was one of
There's
the
already been a
Italians-
party on the moon, and we
Yeah,
missed it.
yeah. Well, someone didn't.
Yeah.
And one of them brought a bottle of wine.
Wow.
And so Kesh said one of the funniest experiences for him was seeing a drunk soul, because he was watching this on a soul level or something like that, and he just thought it was a hilarious experience to see this drunk Italian woman on the moon.
So did they literally bring the bottle in the jump room
Yeah.
with them?
Yeah.
And were they
So they were in the room like normal.
drinking
like
it while they
just-
were in the room?
I can only imagine that would be the only way that would work. But they
Wow.
were experiencing it as if they were not there at
Yeah.
all. And one of the most interesting things he said from those longer experiences of like hours of being in the system was that immediately upon returning back, so they would be in this space for half an hour or something like that, but then they did some longer tests where I think the Italians were there for 4 or 5 hours. I guess they got lucky.
Yeah.
Um,
Jeez.
but then they came back through the 3 chairs to kind of like decompress or come back to the physical body.
Yeah.
And immediately upon exit of the last chair, these people were sprinting for the washrooms. They had to use the restrooms and didn't know because they weren't in their physical bodies.
Oh my gosh.
And immediately upon coming back, he said again, this was really funny for him to watch because he was like, what's going, oh, they need to pee.
Right.
But they've been in this jump room where the soul is acting and governing the body where that's not even an issue.
Right.
You don't pee in your dreams.
Right.
The soul doesn't need to go and urinate. it's going to go hang out and do whatever. It doesn't need to eat. It doesn't need to sleep. It doesn't need to use the restroom.
Right.
That's the body's problems.
Right.
So this is all very interesting for him to watch and see happen, and then share with us, obviously.
Wow. Okay, so I know you and I have talked about this, but for people watching, is this travel, when you say this person's gone to the moon and they were having a party on the moon and whatever, is that physical or is this an astral? Like, are they astral projecting and their body's still in the pod, or are they actually creating, like when you said he looked down and he saw his physical body, do you think that's something that if we had a telescope and we looked up at the moon and that person was standing at the right spot, do you think we would see them there?
That's a great question. I don't know is the answer I can give you for now. I know currently they are essentially doing what you would call astral travel. Again, it doesn't use that language, but I think that's probably a good reference point for
Yeah.
people. So the physical body in the first experiences always stayed, and that wasn't going to change. They were always going to be physically in the room no matter what, but their soul was able to go through the magnetic fields and travel where it wanted to go. So other people that had experiences went to the sun, went to a water planet. One woman went to a water planet with her partner, and her partner couldn't breach the surface of the water, but she could because she was I think she was a shaman, so had more experience traveling in that realm. And she saw her partner like not want to get into the water,
Oh my gosh.
but she went, and she was like an octopus being hanging out in the water
Whoa.
with like or a mermaid body or something like that. I can't recall.
Something fitting for the
a
environment.
fishy body for a fishy place.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I guess because she saw that her partner couldn't come with, she tried to go somewhere else where they could go together. And
Wow.
so these people are in half an hour or an hour having like multiple experiences going different places very quickly.
Wow.
Other people saw loved ones that have passed on and went and met the mom or the dad.
That does sound more like an astral thing then in that case.
Yeah.
That, yeah, if they're seeing discarnate entities and stuff.
Yeah, but not so much physically, but the energy of them.
Right.
So they would go somewhere and feel that love of the mother or the father that passed on 40 years ago, and they would commune and hang out and
Okay. In a
and then
different way that they
resolve.
would see themselves physically. Like they
Perhaps. I'm not sure if those people even looked at their bodies. I just remember hearing bits and pieces. Again, I've been listening to some of these, but not all of them.
Yeah.
Another gentleman, or a few people, went and saw the soul of Christ,
Wow.
and so they wanted to go meet the soul of Christ. And one person actually described his physical appearance, so that was fascinating.
Was it what we think it is?
No, yeah, of course not.
Very different.
Yeah, I think so. I think a far more Middle Eastern look than
Right.
the
That
white,
makes sense.
blue-eyed, blonde-haired Jesus character that the West has invented.
Yeah.
But again, it might be different for different people. So it's not to say that one person had this experience and therefore it is,
Right.
it could be correct for them.
Right.
And
Totally get
and the
that.
souls are the ones that are doing the work anyway. So anyway, but yeah,
Wow.
there's a lot of fascinating things that happened in the last few months with that. But what's really interesting for me, I mean, it's all fascinating for me, but the next phase of what they're doing in Austria in these systems is called transmutation. So the first was a soul travel experience. The second one is what we would commonly call teleporting.
Okay.
So again, sci-fi bringing it into the reality that this is actually possible. Last week, I think they had their first test with a couple, and the couple didn't know that that's what was happening, but they came into the experience expecting to do the soul travel experience of going somewhere or meeting someone or going to another planet, and instead they ran an experiment. And so this experiment was super fascinating for Keshe Foundation. It basically was a complete success for what they wanted to do, and it wasn't the full teleportation right at once, but they moved one of the energy centers of one of the people into the other and had the other one experience it.
Wow.
So the husband's, I think his soul field was moved into her body, and she physically felt it in the left side of her heart. And at one point, Keshe asked him, this gentleman, to send his wife something, and he was in such a blissed out state in this beautiful plasmatic fields of the universe, going, I don't even know what I would want to send her except for love and light. And so she felt that in her whole being, and he was so moved by this that he was barely able to speak. He was choking on his words, and even hours later, they had to actually redo this interview for microphone problems or something like that. And 4 or 5 hours later, he retells the story, and he's just as emotional.
Wow.
And he describes like a buzzing, like a whole swarm of bees in his entire body, like buzzing with energy. Some of the side effects of people that have gone through the system are far less eating of food for weeks, months, perhaps forever,
Wow.
because they've been opened up to the fields of the universe, which is how essentially Keshe Foundation wants all of us to be feeding. There was a very funny joke. He talked about vegans, vegetarians, and meat eaters or something like that. And someone was asking him, what's the best way to eat? He kind of just laughed and said, well, you're killing the plants, you're killing the cow, or you're killing whatever else. It's all killing.
Right.
You need to get out of that and open up to the fields of the universe where you're fed by a creator. Which, again, at the time I laughed and thought that was really funny, and I started eating meat again. Because he said, well, are
It's
you
all,
gonna,
yeah.
are you
One or
eating
the
a
other.
bowl of rice? Well, that's 1,000 souls, because
Yeah.
he considers every grain of rice to be a soul.
Yeah.
And then he said, well, are you eating the entire cow, or are you sharing it? And I went, that's really funny. And a lot of people might not like that, but it's
Interesting.
just a different perspective. And I'm not saying this is right, wrong, or anything like that, but it just made me rethink a lot of things about why we're doing stuff on this planet and why we really are in this physical body so attached to eating and killing. And Keshe calls this planet the red planet, not the blue planet, for all the death that happens here.
Interesting.
So his mission is quite huge. It's really to elevate all of humanity up to the next level of our awakening,
Yeah.
and to be bringing the technology in a way that isn't magic and that isn't hidden in some space program or some deep state bunker under thousands of feet of concrete.
Right.
No, this is for all of us, and that's what's so fascinating.
And it's already happening.
And it's
already here.
It's now. We're not waiting 10, 20 years to go and teleport to another dimension.
We don't need to petition the government to release black projects and all this. We just have to actually fund things like this, scientists that are working on these things publicly that the governments are suppressing and poo-pooing.
Yeah, there's a full media blackout on Keshe Foundation thanks to Fox News. Surprise, surprise.
And why thanks to Fox News?
They're the ones that did it.
How do we know that?
Keshe, again, it's just drop bits and pieces.
Like they're the ones that put out the call, like don't talk to these guys.
Don't talk about Keshe Foundation, period.
And one of the
Ever.
things I brought up to you is I've never even seen it on alternative media.
That's
So it's like this blackout is
Exactly.
literally applying not just to the mainstream, but to the alternative, to these places that so many people think are operating in integrity, but they're also blacking it out. I've not heard a single alternative media talk about Keshe. I've only heard it from word of mouth from people like you and other people that are working with Gans,
Exactly.
which astounds me.
Yeah. Well, that's for me why it's like so much more real. Like if there is a potential for this to be a full worldwide blackout on something like this, why?
Yeah.
Because it's working? Because it's going to endanger their entire system? Right. So yeah,
Crazy.
we're living in like the penultimate time to be here on this planet, to see this shift happen and to see the flip. It's going to be so
Totally.
cool. It is so cool. I mean, it's happening in front of our eyes.
So you were telling me about, you were talking about these jump rooms, right? And when we talked like a couple weeks ago, outside of my place, and you were talking about like the possibility of the instead of the pod, the room is the jump room, but then you were saying the whole planet could become the jump room, hypothetically. So
Yeah.
explain a little bit about that. What
Yeah,
does that mean?
thank you for bringing that back in, because that is really, like, if we talk about infiltration from within a few moments ago when before the interview, and we talked about how, you know, that's the real Trojan horse through many of these existing systems,
Yeah.
where you can't really stop anything and it's just going to have one day where it's going to flip. This feels like one of those.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable, and it's based on our consciousness evolving. So one of the many things that these systems will do, other than perhaps just make you feel really good, maybe have a soul travel experience, go someplace, meet somebody, maybe even teleport the physical body from one location to another, which is what they're calling transmutation in the next phase.
Right.
Which is just now, I think, in its like first or second week. So we'll be going through that system as well. I'll be going another guinea pig for that. So we'll find out. Maybe I can teleport around in a few weeks and tell you guys what's happening.
Yeah, dude, that's so exciting.
That'll be really cool. But
let's get into that more in a sec too.
Yeah, totally. But back to the planet. So essentially, they're going to be elevating the fields of the individuals that go through these systems, and then these people are returning back to their home countries, wherever that might be. And the real thing is, as we go and be our highest vibration, if we are living our highest passion and joy, people around us start to feel that, regardless of this Kesh Foundation technology or anything else. If you're living your excitement, people feel what you feel like, and it elevates them.
Yeah.
So that's what they're doing in these systems, is even bringing your physical body and your emotional body and all the rest of the, whatever you want to call them, the astral bodies, into a higher resonance with you, with who we really are. And that vibrational shift is going to start affecting people around us. So as we go back to our home nations around the planet, at a certain point, there's going to be enough souls placed around the planet to bring the whole planet with us. So we don't have to have everybody go through these systems.
So what you're describing is essentially the mass awakening of consciousness. It doesn't even need the technology.
That's right.
So how does it go from that point of relying on these pods and these jump rooms and the physical tech to us just doing it ourselves without physical tech? Where is that?
I think it's a
bridge?
remembrance. I think that's really what this is going to unlock, is new gifts that have always been there. We just didn't know how to use them. I mean, if you got a handbook on how to use the body, please, send it my way. I haven't got that one.
Right, exactly.
There's no car manual that tells you, hey, go to page 48 for teleportation. But no, I feel like it's just an energetic shift.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, if we can recall who we really are, and we know we are all one consciousness, and everything is consciousness, and we're literally dreaming this reality together, it kind of opens all the doors.
So basically the tech is acting as kind of the jump start or the catalyst to get the remembering process going. And once we have enough people remembering about this innate like superpower or this innate ability of our bodies, it could create that chain reaction.
Yeah.
And you don't need the tech anymore. It's just like the tech is just kind of the jump start to get us to remember what we've already forgotten.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I really feel that. And I mean, if we all know we came to this planet, I mean, many people will use the language of star seeds or something like that, where you feel like you have a resonance with a different place, and you have an energy of that, or you have memories even of coming from another location.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then the soul carries memory. And if the soul carries memories from a past incarnation or a past life or a past cycle, or just somehow has acquired that knowledge through its travel, what else has it acquired? What hasn't it shared with us? So if we can elevate our physical bodies to a point where it can match that soul energy, and the soul can then communicate with us, I feel like that's what we're really doing. We're going into these systems to meet ourselves, to meet who we truly are and be fed by the universe, which is us. So it's a hilarious feedback system that at a certain point we won't need.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if I can go through this system in a few weeks, and I'll be happy to do an interview when I get back,
Definitely.
and just get the before and after. I mean, how many people do we need around the planet to do this? I think there's only been about 80 people that have done the first phase, and I think we're going to be within the first probably 20 people to do the second one.
Wow. And
So,
the first phase is the more astral travel one.
That's
The
right.
second phase is the transmutation, physical,
Yeah.
hypothetically like physical travel.
that's the target.
And so you were telling me like they're wanting to experiment with people getting, like walking around and picking up objects, right? And
That's
then
right.
bringing that back so they can prove there's a physicality to the travel.
Right. Yeah, that's another aspect which I haven't heard them discuss lately. But there was at one point when they were doing the trips to the moon, they wanted people to grab a cup or something and pick up some moon dust and see if they could bring the cup back.
Mm-hmm.
And
On the transmutation side of it, right?
well, that was before the transmutation had happened.
Oh, okay.
So they were still in that astral travel trying to see what would happen.
Yeah,
And I think they all failed because the physical body wasn't there.
right.
But that was, again, testing. It wasn't like, hey, this is going to work. It's like, hey, can we confirm this is a no?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, okay, what can we do to move to the next stage? But the moment where we can move, and I say we, but the moment the Keshe Foundation can move a soul from let's say one of these units to the other, and the other person in that system can recognize that that's the soul of their partner, that's their lover from 50 years, that's the energy of that person. So the first test was a success because they moved the physical, or they moved the energy of the one being into the other person. They recognized them as, that's my lover, that's my soulmate, whatever you want to say. But if they can move the first energy center over and have the second energy center being the physical body follow, that would be the teleportation that we're talking about.
Wow.
And we're excited about. So one of the things Keshe talked about in one of the teachings was, in the first experience, we ask you to go to the moon, or we ask you to go to Mars, or you go to the Creator, you go to the sun, or wherever. In the second phase, you only have one dream, the other chair. Meaning we're dreaming ourselves into the other position.
And the expectation is the physical body materializes,
Because it's us
right, in that other
other
position.
place. So there's like, remove the distractions. Don't go to God. Don't go to hang out with your friends that died 20 years ago. Move yourself over there.
Right.
Because if this is all a dream, that we're collectively dreaming together, why not be able to dream that?
So what is the implications of that? What does that mean for...
That would literally change the planet overnight. I mean, borders would instantly be dissolved because people would be blooping into the backyard here. There's no immigration services waiting for you to check you in. So that would dissolve governments really quickly. I mean, it sounds almost ridiculous.
But this would be like a chain reaction where people are coming into this ability and they're just able to do it. They don't need the jump room.
Exactly.
The Earth becomes the jump room for the transmutation as well.
Yeah.
It's the similar kind of concept, or at least that's what they're kind of
it seems like that's where it could go. And I mean, years ago, this is like maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, they ran a test between like 3 different nations where they had these dynamic reactors. So these Gans fields were in these little plastic or polycarbonate spheres, and they were spun by motors. And they had 3 of these or 4 of these systems around the world, and they all linked up. And someone in Canada was able to stop the one in Italy instantly. So this showed zero-time communication across the planet. So this was an early test they did, and this was knowledge seekers. This was people like you and me doing this on a live Zoom call together.
Yeah.
So the intention was set, hey, stop the one in Italy or stop the one in Canada, and it did.
Wow.
So these fields can interact across distance with no problem whatsoever.
That's crazy.
So from that perspective, it makes sense to me that if you placed, let's say, 50 people around the planet in different locations, or even just, I don't know, maybe 2 people on either side of Parliament buildings or at the White House, would you influence the people inside that place to now maybe not make shitty decisions?
Right.
And all you need is one leader of one nation to wake up from their crap and go, oh, I'm not going to do this, and have that awakening moment, and all of a sudden there's a nation where all this technology could be brought out of. So
that's crazy.
I mean, that to me sounds
so
like
fast.
It could happen real quick, and it might not.
Nothing can stop what's coming, right?
Nothing can stop what's coming, but it could also be more years.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the part of me that isn't attached to an outcome on this. and it's really just about us awakening into our highest and truest potential and what we want to be bringing on this planet, and not worried about some government blah 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 or a new lockdown of some issue or a financial crisis happening and everyone losing everything and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can move your body around the planet and go to the grocery store without a car, do we need grocery stores, or do we go to the farmers? Do we need transportation at all of goods coming on freight trucks going around the planet? Like, it really shifts a lot. And if we can have energy production from hydrogen machines that cost $10,000 that sit in our backyard that run a turbine that then you can run the gas on as well. Like, if you had a turbine running on a hydrogen cell that essentially was plugged into the fields of the universe that makes hydrogen on demand,
Yeah.
that then powers the natural gas in your house or whatever you're using to fuel your cooking and your heating needs and your cooling needs. We don't need any of the governments for any of this stuff.
Yeah.
It basically just goes, well, let's just circumvent that corrupt thing and continue. So we become one nation, one planet, one race, the human race.
And it could happen like that.
Real quick.
Blink of an eye,
Real
basically.
quick.
Drop in the bucket.
Yeah. I heard 2022 was going to be the year of a lot of change on this planet, and I've been surprised to find it's been real quick, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know what your experience has been like, but the beginning of last year till the beginning of this year, it seems like a whole different planet.
It does. And even on a personal level, I feel like I've gone through the most amount of trials and tribulation and evolution this year than any other year. So like macro and micro, and I think a lot of people feel that way. It's been
Yep.
a lot.
Everything's bubbling up,
Yeah.
whether it's political or in our own lives and our relationships and families and everything else.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all been a beautiful blessing. I hope that we can get a little bit, more interesting things happening rather than the doom and gloom that's been going on in a lot of people's lives. But I think after you transcend that in your own experience, it's actually just happy and awesome to be around right now. People that are still struggling and in that half system, it feels like they're doing the splits. You know, they've got one foot in their old job because they need their job to make the bills, but blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But they're not doing what they want to do. So for me, it was really like when I jumped with 2 feet into what I wanted to do in this world, where all my excitement showed up, and creating technology using this knowledge that I've been given freely
Yeah.
has been the biggest blessing. And sharing that with other people and having them have experiences that go, oh my God, this has changed my dream time, or my relationship's better, or my health has improved,
Yeah.
or whatever these different avenues are that we need to have assistance in our lives. Like, that to me is like the biggest blessing. Like, I could care less about dollars. I mean,
Yeah.
if I can feed myself and have a house where I can work, that's enough.
Yep. Yep.
I'm not saving for retirement. I don't need to,
Yeah.
the dollars at the end of the month are spent, and that's great. We can do it again, and we can start creating more stuff that really helps people.
So you're working on your own technologies. You're creating you're basically your own inventions with this technology right now.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, so we can maybe pop a couple things on the screen here. I've been essentially working with my friend Sasha, and together we've built something called ProjectLove. So if you guys want to check that out, iproject.love is the website. Put your email and your name and contact info in there, and we'll be doing newsletters and sending stuff out. But essentially the premise of ProjectLove is, well, it's a lot of things, but I am the project. We are all the project. So until we've resolved our healing and clearing of baggage that we needed to look at, and had our moments to really internalize all of our problems that we see in the world, we can't really go and create our projects in the world. But when we have done the healing work, we've done the clearing, we've understood where we are, we understood what we want to be doing, and we start moving into our excitement, into our passion, we then begin to project our love into the world. So it's a bit of a triple entendre there.
Yeah.
But so yeah, the idea with that project is actually we've created an app, which will be released in probably the next month or so.
Cool.
Maybe sooner. We're basically finished and waiting for the guys to do the development, to round it all out. But you'll be creating a personal profile. So what your passions are, what you love to do in the world, what you want to see happen, who you are basically. And you're going to list your skill sets. So what are you good at? What do you really love doing? Not what you've done for 30 years because you've been an architect and you're really great at it. Well, okay, sure. But do you want to build like the new world, or do you want to build boxes?
Right.
Maybe you can apply that to a new skill set. But then you're going to create projects that you want to see happen in the world. And so the app will essentially work like a dating app, where people and projects will start finding each other.
That's super cool.
And so we build essentially a whole back end that's going to look really good. And so you find your teams. The teams will get listed on the app, and essentially, like, if you know how to start a healing center, but you have no idea how to be a CEO or don't know how to do accounting, you'll leave those bubbles open in the project, and that's what the app will try and find, is people that resonate or need to be found with that project. And then you'll meet each other. If you swipe right on both of it, whatever, you'll link up. You'll have a chat room to hang out in, and then see if that person's work is good to work with. If that's the case, once the projects are filled out and all the bubbles are basically assigned, the community will start voting on what projects they want to see happen in the world. And then my brother Sasha, or my friend, is going to be doing deep dive interviews with those people, check that they're in integrity, make sure that the project is actually in resonance with what we want to be doing in the world. Not we as in us, but like the whole collective. And then trying to fund the project live on air with cryptocurrencies.
Nice, with crypto. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
so there'll be a crypto component. There might also just be, so you'll pay like $4 a month to have your projects listed. Your personal profiles are free. It'll always be free. But yeah, something like $4 a month to have your project listed.
That's nothing. That's great. That's like so easy.
Exactly. And you can do up to 5, I think. No more than 5 projects at a time per person. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to dilute it all. But essentially, you might have your thing listed for 4 or 5 months, find your dream team, have the project listed, and then the funds that are spent to have those projects listed get returned back to fund the projects.
That's super cool.
So it's an internal feedback loop. Again, I think Sasha and I will draw a small salary essentially just to live frugal lives that we need, but everything else will be.
It's going to help you keep doing it too. It's going to help you be able to invest back into the project and everything.
And this is we literally need this tool to find our people.
Yeah.
So that was it. Like we were very selfish with this. We were like, well, how do we find the highest integrity person? Oh shit, we need to build a whole. Okay.
That's how the best things are made. You find a problem that hasn't been solved, and you solve it yourself, and then you help a bunch of other people with the same problem.
Yeah.
So that's super cool.
Yeah. So that's the iProject.love website. Check it out.
I'll put it in the description so you guys can just click the link there.
Perfect. Yeah. And so what Sasha did for me actually was about a year and a half ago when we met. I was still working as a carpenter and a painter, and went up to some nature one day, and I kind of told him, like, man, I used to do video stuff and filmmaking, and like I could edit videos. And he turned to look at me. He was like, are you kidding? I've been looking for someone that would do that without wearing a mask. This is 2 years ago or something, or a year and a half ago, up in Canada where shit was really bad.
Yeah.
And so he basically said, how long are you going to be a painter and a carpenter for? There's infinite funds for the mission. And I kind of looked at him like, what? Who are you? What do you mean infinite funds? And the mission. Okay. And so a month later, I wrapped up all the contracts that I'd been doing and volunteered for him for free for a month, and essentially just started the new life. And so we made videos trying to wake people up to the narrative of what was happening in the world for about 9 months. And then, just like an enough is enough salary is what he provided with me. So he's like, add up all your expenses, let me know what that number is, and that's what I'm going to pay you. And so for the last year and a half, that's what's been happening. And we've created an app. The last 2 months, I've been making plasma devices. And one of them is a pair of wands that you hold in your hands, these nano-coated copper wands that are dipped in specific Gans materials that resonate with the 2 energy centers in the brain and in the heart. And people have had like really fascinating experiences with them. You can immediately feel them. Like there's no like, oh, I don't know if I feel you immediately feel the energy. I know you've experienced it a little bit.
Definitely.
People have had very interesting dreams after meditating with them for about 10-15 minutes. The other night at a friend's place, I was holding one in my right hand. She was holding one in her left hand, and we were doing an astral travel projection together.
Yeah.
And I literally had to drop the wand. It was too much energy. I was like, this is my foot. My foot was zapping. I was like, nope. Don't want that anymore.
That's
so
funny.
there was about 10-15 minutes where I was getting juiced up, and she felt all the energy going through our like collective. It was very, very interesting.
Wow.
So we went up to, tried to go up into a ship and explore something, which for her was more visual than for me. It was my first time trying that
That's cool.
in tandem.
Yeah.
Like, I'd never done that before. I'd always just like solo, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's other people that have had these wands, and one woman held them for about 10 minutes before bed meditation, and her dreams and her partner's dreams synced up that night. So she was dreaming about her first boyfriend and introducing her current boyfriend to that boyfriend. And he was dreaming of his first girlfriend and introducing her to his current girlfriend.
That's crazy. I had a dream like that, like literally introducing my first girlfriend to my wife like a couple weeks ago.
Okay, fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, you've had the plasma around your house too,
I
so
did.
I don't know. Maybe
You know
that's
what?
maybe
I
that's been
wonder
going
if
on.
it was around the same time period that I came by and that Alexis and I worked with the wands. I
That's
think it
true.
might have been around that time period, funny enough.
Yeah,
That's really strange.
and a version of that happened with me as well. With one of these, in one of the classes, there was a test that was run by Kesh, and we didn't know. I didn't know it was happening. My phone died. I wasn't even in the meeting anymore. And that night, my soul went and met with the first girl that I ever wanted to be with,
Wow.
and so we had this energetic clearing that happened. And the next day, it was so strong. I went and like looked for her on Facebook to be like, hey, I had a dream about you. Hope you're well. Like whatever.
Yeah.
And then a week later, I found out that they'd run a test in that class in that exact time at night when I had that experience where Kesh put his phone into one of the spaceship units and took the whole Zoom call on a soul travel experience by remote.
Oh my God, he put his phone in it? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
and it worked. Like,
Wow.
everyone had very, very different experiences, but the whole body felt numb for
Yeah.
most people and was really heavy. And then they were having these like very rapid fire experiences of like zooming from place to place to place to place, like almost too quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the same night.
That's crazy.
So it's like 5 people now that have
Yeah.
had the wands that have all had like emotional relationship stuff processed. So there's no coincidence there anymore.
Powerful for sure.
Yeah.
I was thinking we could pop inside real quick and show the wands on camera inside.
Yeah,
especially
we
'cause
could. Yeah.
We're getting bit up by mosquitoes like crazy out here.
Yeah, that's true.
So-
Absolutely. Yeah, blood was boiling here.
Yeah.
There's another device that I just finished creating too. We can maybe show a quick video of that.
Yeah. Let's do it.
And yeah, that's just like this 2 spheres of Gans material that are spinning in counter-rotating fields. So one is the energy center in the brain, that cup 1 soul field,
Yeah.
and the other one is the emotional field. And then I have I think it's 16 nano-coated copper tubes that are filled with organite that are around the outside and essentially are creating a huge field container around them. So we did a bit of testing on that with some different tools. There was an ELF tool, which is measuring ultra low frequencies, and they showed a very spiraling pattern off both of the spheres.
Yeah, I'll play
And,
that video right now.
Yeah, cool. And
You could really see like it was producing different kinds of fields depending on where on the device you were reading it. Like you said, the middle was more neutral. The top and the bottom had a more active field.
yeah,
It's
and
interesting
it's
to
almost
see.
like you can see like it's a 2-dimensional waveform on the screen, but you can see it's almost like if it was a 3D, you would be seeing probably one spiral this way and the other one going the other way.
Yeah.
We did a bit of muscle testing on that system. After I think maybe about 2 hours after it was set up, it had a 60-foot radius of influence.
Wow.
About 4 hours later, it was at 70 feet.
Wow. So it's just
So
growing.
it's building. Yeah, and I haven't tested it again since, but I think it's probably growing yet.
Wow.
What's really trippy about the plasma is that it kind of just doesn't care about our dimensional space.
Yeah.
And it can travel very, very easily. So that whole house is basically, this big bubble right now, my friend's place. So
Wow.
they're
Is it just
sleeping in
on
it.
running?
Yeah, it's on 24 hours. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
He's a guinea pig.
yeah, exactly.
See
Yeah,
what
yeah.
kind of superpowers he gets now.
Yeah, well, she
Or she?
yeah, it's her and her roommate, and her roommate's been going through some health things, which I think have been almost accelerated by this. I don't want to say it's better or worse, but it's just like things are coming up.
Yeah.
But they're also taking plasma baths, so they're putting the Gans water in the bath and having that, have a good effect.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'd love for you if you guys want to check it out. Again, we're gonna have on the iProject.love page. We'll have a tech page that's probably getting built today, so you guys can go check that out. The wands are $333, and the bigger unit is $3,300. And everything that we're creating from the ProjectLove Tech division that I'm making, 1/3 of the profits are returned to Kesh Foundation for the knowledge shared. 1/3 of the profits are back to ProjectLove to fund more projects, and 1/3 of the profits are to the inventor.
That's
In
awesome.
which case, me for this one, the wands I had help with, so my other brother Will and I are going to be splitting that 33%.
Nice.
So it's not a lot of dollars for us at the end of the day.
That's really generous of you.
Yeah,
Give it back.
we need to, because this is knowledge that essentially was given freely to us.
Yeah.
As knowledge seekers, we applied it. Yes, we learned it, but we really need to keep feeding that back in. Otherwise, there's no supply.
Yeah.
So that's something I just wanted to drop in and make sure
Yeah.
People
Awesome.
think, oh, it's expensive. Well, yeah, well, I'm going to take about a third of that home.
Yeah.
And if we can sell a third of those, let's say we can get 1 or 2 of those units out a month, of the bigger units, well, we're going to be essentially sponsoring somebody to go through these spaceship experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So if I send $1,000 to Keshe Foundation tomorrow, someone who can't afford to go can go and meet their creator or go have an experience.
Yeah.
And the same goes for the wands. It's about $100 a year to be a Keshe Foundation student, a knowledge seeker is what they're called. So again, we'll be doing the same thing with that. So $100 will be sent off from each pair of wands that we create, and someone can get free education in the science of the universe.
That's amazing. So not only are you benefiting from buying the device for yourself, but you're helping support people use the program and travel and test new technologies.
And elevate the entire planet, because
Yeah.
every single being that goes through these systems is going to have a huge effect on their environment, and that's just going to continue to unfold. So
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah.
Dude, this has been sweet.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah,
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on and explaining all this stuff. And it's really like, you're the only person I know that is able to legit like talk about this stuff and articulate it in the way you can, and talk about not just like the GANs, but everything else the Keshe Foundation's doing. Everything else you explained is like something I've not heard from anyone else. So it's like it's really cool.
Well,
and
thanks for having
it's
me.
not just Nikolai saying it. Like, you can go on and you
Yeah.
can join the Keshe Foundation school, right?
Yep.
Anyone can join it, and you can go be a part of these studies and these experiments for yourself.
Yeah.
If you're called to it. So
Yeah. Well, if you guys want to check it out, Keshe.Foundation is their main website. You can probably find all the links from there, but they're on YouTube. Wednesday night at midnight Pacific time is when the weekly conferences are, or the weekly calls. So there'll be one tonight.
Cool.
This video will probably come out later, but hey, you know,
Yeah.
if you guys want any Wednesday, check that out. And yeah, if you guys want to follow anything up on what we're doing, iProject.love on TikTok and on Instagram. That's my brother Sasha, who you'll see over there. My TikTok and Instagram is at Return of Tesla.
Return of Tesla. And his name is Nikolai T. His last name literally starts with the T.
Yeah.
His name is Nikolai.
So, you know, I don't know.
It's pretty crazy. Pretty synchronistic.
But yeah, thanks for being here and checking it out, and appreciate you guys.
Sweet. Thank you again, man. We'll see
You're
you guys
welcome.
next time. Take care.
Bye.